If it's got no soul, I don't want it. You probably feel the same way. There's no depth to it. What's the point in it? Ever since I was young, like really young, I would always bring up the topic. I would always bring it back to something spiritual. It's just always seemed to be the case. Didn't matter how old I was or who my friends were. So if they happen to be my friend, if somebody happened to be my friend, then they know this about me. But here's the deal. So I remember I was probably in like grade 7, something like that. And I remember I had been at camp, Bible camp, good old Bible camp, back in the day. And I remember one of the church pastors saying something about, if people didn't, worship God, then the rest of the earth would. And I remember telling a boy this, he knew nothing about anything spiritual. I knew nothing at all. And I remember just sitting there talking one night, and he was just absorbing every single ounce of what I was saying. And I remember saying that. And then years later, I remember him telling me, hey, I went home and I told my parents about this and about that. And, it really stuck with me. Now, at the time, I was just repeating some pastor's words, right? Of, the birds and the trees and everything would worship God if nobody did, which, I view that totally different now. We don't need to worship nobody, but I believe that act was an act of thankfulness, and so that is going to create so much goodness in your world, right? Because you're putting that out, so you're just going to get more things to be thankful for. And the world used to set aside. I mean, I live in Joplin, Missouri, so people still do this here. But the whole world used to spend their Sundays devoted to God. And so for a time, for that, the hour that you're there, that you're listening, that you're singing, that you're lifting your spirits up, hopefully, if not, go to a different church. The whole world got that reprieve. The goodness that came into it, because as a collective level, right, that you as an individual, you get to choose and determine your moods, but the world only operates with the collective. So we were doing good things for our world. And, if you recall, back in the day when this was the case, when people did this all the time, there was way less natural disasters and things like that. Why? Because people were giving their attention to church and to goodness rather than to the news and the media. And back then, if you wanted to see the news, well, you better watch it at 5 o'clock, or you better watch it at 12 o'clock, or you weren't going to see it. And I was obviously too busy watching Looney Tunes to ever watch the news back in the day. So I don't even know what was on it. But our parents did, right? They watched it, and then they operated out of that place. Whereas now, social media, the news is in your face 24/7, and so people are operating out of that level. And it's lower than what we're supposed to have, and it's a very earthly 3D frequency. It's not truth at all. But because what they tell us will be made manifest through our focus and through our belief, the energy, the frequency that we're putting out, the things that they're telling us are predictive to the point that they know this. They know this because they're not stupid freaking idiots that are still sleeping. They're wide awake, and they know exactly what they're doing to us. Through the news, through the TV, through all the things. They know exactly. It's us that doesn't know. It's us that thinks that we can just sit there and watch this low vibe thing that makes us feel all crappy and think that it's not going to affect us in our real life, when it 100% indeed does. So when I came back from the cabin, I was in this very uplifted state. And I realized, so I would get bored, right? And I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to watch some Netflix. And then pretty soon it becomes addictive, right? And I'm like, hey, no, I'm just watching this innocent show. It's hilarious. Sure, they make fun of people once in a while, but they're freaking hilarious. And I didn't realize how much of that was degrading me degrading my soul, degrading the level, the vibe, the frequency where I had been to where it then was taking me, to the point now that I can't even watch it. And it's not just that I don't have the attention span for it, which I don't, but it is detrimental to us here that we think that we can just watch these horrible shows, where these tragedies happen to these other people, and think that that's not going to affect us. There's things that happen here now that did not happen 100 years ago. And it is 100% because of these television shows and because of the video games. And I remember thinking several years ago, before I really understood how things worked. We're going to go back to the love in a minute. But I remember thinking it was ridiculous, some kid going and having this video game that's got all these guns and this and that, it's not going to make him go and do something along those lines. But I see now it really is. It really is. It's then when you're in that is your consciousness level at that time. And depending on the child, depending on well, it's not only children playing this, depending on the person at the time, it really can downgrade you. You want to go around shooting people? Do you think that that's putting good things in the consciousness? And I know it's fun. Frick, I used to play 007. I loved it. I was addicted to it. But some of these games there's something. And I just think, do you want to keep putting that out in the consciousness? So, if nobody worshiped God, and I don't believe in worship, but I believe in thankfulness, and I don't believe in God, I believe in the divine, but you know what I'm saying, thankfulness for the divine. If nobody did this, the trees would still do it, and it's true, because I've felt it. That's how I know. This is how I help people. I went tree hugging one day because this one particular tree, I've got pictures of it. I know exactly where it is, and every time I go to the cabin, that's my baby. And it allowed me to tap in at that moment because my consciousness was completely clear, empty, completely empty vessel. And I had been for, quite some time at this time. And so, like days. So I go to this tree and I put my hands on it and I touch it and I felt the love like I've never experienced anything like that in my life. I cannot actually even express to you what it was like, because I basically guarantee that you haven't felt that either. But if you have, it's wonderful, and it was wonderful. It was almost too much to take. It was just crazy to think. But when I touched that tree and I put my head on it and my bare feet are on the ground and I'm connected with it, it told me things, and I felt the love, and I just knew at that moment, I'm like, you could never get that from a person, because people have all kinds of issues attached to it, and so they don't give their love freely, right? There's usually fear that is attached to it. And that tree didn't have any fear. It was just living in the truth. It was living in high vibe, 100% divine alignment. So that pure acceptance that I felt, it changed my life. It was in that moment. And I had experienced the enlightenment. I had been in those high states. I had been in the expanded form. But I had never experienced that depth of love until that moment there. And it was that knowing of, wow, if it is this overwhelming and this perfect, there's nothing that it cannot do. But people can block it, right? I could speak the word for somebody, and somebody could be sitting there and their consciousness isn't cleansed and they still got all this other crap going on, and they will not accept it. So consciousness needs to be cleansed, and this is something that you need to do daily. Every day. There's not one day that goes by that I don't think about this, and think about, okay, let's say if I'm in this particular state, you wake up feeling sad. Maybe you had some kind of dream you don't even know about. I don't ever remember mine. but maybe you wake up feeling some sort of way. I would immediately be attentive and attuned to that, thinking, something's here, something wants my attention, something needs to be resolved. And it's going to be tricky to go on with my day without resolving it first, because I know how important it is. But sometimes we can consume our life with people that have no soul, no depth in their conversation, no depth within them, and it is only because they haven't discovered that yet and they don't know how, or they have no interest in it, or that's not why they're here, which I believe that's the highest thing that we can achieve and obtain while we're here, is connection with divine alignment. It's the only thing we're really seeking. Sometimes we'll seek it in money, sometimes we'll seek it in relationships, but we're not seeking the money. We're not seeking the relationships. The only thing that we're actually seeking is that connection, which is why when you get all that money and when you get those relationships, you still feel that empty pit, because that wasn't the thing. And it was never the thing, and it's never going to be the thing. And no matter how hard you try, there's just going to be this deep hole that's just empty within you if you don't fill it up with soul-based things. And sometimes we can get off the path. We can have pain that comes into us so bad. This could be any kind of pain, which emotional pain always leads to physical pain. But we could have so much of that that we don't even know where to begin. It feels like we're drowned in. And it's okay to be there. And in fact, it's good. Because it will lead to better. But here's the fastest way to get out of it. Be thankful for it now. Be thankful for it in the right now, even if it's hard, even if it's painful. You know, I switched that up a while ago. If something bad was coming, then I just was immediately joyful and thankful that it was happening, because I knew good was going to come from it, and because I expect it, because I know it always comes from it, and it'll come rapidly, because that feeling of thankfulness rather than that feeling of sorrow is real powerful. But sometimes we got to go through it. Sometimes we got to go through whatever it is. Maybe you're going through the sadness. Maybe you need to feel it. Maybe you need to understand what you have done that has caused this. And I'm not saying, if somebody did something to you and you're, I'm a victim of this, you are, but you need to look at what caused this. Did you fear that it would happen? Because that fear is a powerful frequency, and it will attract fearful things into you. Or is this karma that has returned back to you? Did you do the same thing to somebody else however long ago, years and years and years ago, and you just thought you could get away with it, but it's now come back to harm and hurt you? Or were you subconsciously sending out signals that said, this is inevitable, this horrible thing is coming to me, because of the beliefs that are underlying it? You need to change those beliefs, because your subconscious determines everything that goes on. So if you have any relationships in your life, this is something real good to examine once in a while, because sometimes we don't, right? I've said this before, but I was friends with everybody, and then I realized at one point, you know what? I'm not. I can be kind and friendly, and I can get along with anybody. But that doesn't mean that these people are my people. Everybody is, right? We're all connected, but we need to be with the people who deepen the depths of our soul and who fill that up with love and bring us truth. And there's many people here on this earth who are so materialistic. They're so invested in the, mundane, the unimportant. And when you hang out with people like that, they can make you think that these unimportant things are also important. And they're not, and it will take you off your path, and it will it will cause you to suffer in some way, because anytime that we're not connected with the divine, because it's the only thing that will ever bring any fulfillment to us. But when we're focused on things that aren't that, then we're going to bring those things that aren't that into our life, and you only got so much energy, and your energetic attachments are going to be attached to these things, maybe material things, maybe just things that don't freaking matter, like other people's opinions. Some people are very invested in tearing other people down, and they will just lie and make things up about people that they're jealous of. And if we're not careful, we can get sucked into that trap. I know I used to live in a small town, and years and years and years and years ago, I remember this lady that I was friends with, and anytime I was going to meet somebody else, she would spend as much time as she possibly could telling me all the horrible things that that person had done. And I remember just the whole time she was talking, just thinking in my mind, like, who cares, who cares, who cares? And it was making me think badly of her if she was talking about other people. It was making me think, oh, I can't trust this person. Oh, she talks bad about a lot of people, and I don't tell her nothing. But the whole point of it was that she was hoping to look better, but that was not the outcome for her, although I let her believe that by not saying anything. But sometimes people will bash other people and talk them down so much, and because we're stupid humans, we will get on board with that, and we'll agree, or we'll jump in on the bullying conversation, and we'll lower ourselves to that. Or we'll believe the BS that other people are spewing. And some people talk a lot of things and about a lot of people, and you're like, oh, were you good friends with this person? Oh no, I barely know him. Well, then I'll bet not even 0.01% of what you're saying is actually the truth. But people buy into it because they like to be in those negative conversations. They like to be lowly. But what happens when we hang out with people like this is that we become those people, and those people have to pay for the karma from what they've done. So it's very important who you hang out with, who you spend your time with, who you give your time with. And do these people who you are giving your time to genuinely care about you? If they don't, you are you're spending energy that you could have to yourself, that you could use for deeper, more meaningful and wonderful things, on energies that don't give an F about you. And if you're spending your time on energies that don't care about you at all, the whole fact that they don't care about you means that at some point they are going to harm you. They're going to talk about you. They're going to, all the things that they do to everybody else, you bet your butt they're doing it to you too. So the older you get, well, it's not even that, because some people don't learn their lessons, but the wiser you get, the smaller your circle gets. And you start to realize, I don't feel included. These people seem to be leaving me out. I guess they're not your people. These people, do this and this and this, and I don't feel welcomed there. That's because they're not your people. You don't need 15. You don't need 20. You need one good friend or family member that you've got that's got your back. But if you're spending your energy on other energies that are low frequency, they're going to lower your frequency too. It's the only way. This is how it works. You can't be high vibing and hang out with someone who's low vibing all the time and expect that that's not going to be a draw on your energy. It 1,000,000,000% is. I was at an event this last end of May, and I went around giving hugs to people, as I always do. And I was very observant of the energy that was there, because this was an environment that I more than likely might never find myself in again. with people that I may never see ever again. So I was very observant of the energies, and I could feel, when someone was giving me the love, when someone was nothing there, not given or taken. And then I could feel when people were taking, which there was only one person who was taking, and it was almost too much to handle. I'm going around giving them hugs, and they give me a hug, and all of a sudden I could feel all my energy being sucked out of my body. Then I'm like, I gotta get the frick out of this hug. I couldn't get out of it fast enough. I had never experienced that before. But it was a real good reminder of the pull that people can have on your energy, the drain that they can be on your energy if they are an energy vampire. And so being very conscious of the people in your environment and who you surround yourself with. Because up until the moment of that hug, I was unaware of just how extreme this energy vampire was. And you would never know if you were speaking to them, you might not know that that's what's happening. But on an energetic level, it's happening. And so if we have, and I understand this now, this person has bucket loads of unhealed trauma within them, and so I'm guessing that this is why that was the case. I don't know this for certain, but I'm guessing that's why. But if you surround yourself, put people like this in your environment, like, oh, let's, party and do this and that, and you have these people there, oh man, it can just be so detrimental to your personal and spiritual growth. Very detrimental. I know back in the day, it was really only when I used to drink that I would surround myself with, other people that drank, right? You're just out to go and have a good time and party. And, looking back now, those were some of the blindest years I've ever had in my life. I wasn't being thoughtful about my life. I wasn't caring about myself. Sure, I had fun. Drinking was lots of fun. I haven't drank in years and years now. But that's because I view it completely differently than I did back then. But I see through those years, and the people who were drinking, that spirit of alcohol in itself is low. I mean, it depends on the alcohol. It depends on the spirits. But it's typically low, which is why people do stupid frickin' things when they're drunk. Right? It lowers your vibe so much so that you don't care about yourself at all anymore. It's really showing the truth of how much you care about yourself, which is, very little. And it can do all kinds of things to you and people. But essentially it is changing your spirit. But this doesn't have to be the case with alcohol. I mean, I believe you could use it spiritually just like you could use marijuana or psilocybin or any other drug, and that you could put the good spirit in it, the divine intention connection in it, and you could get that out of it. But typically when people drink, they're just drinking to get drunk and to wash their sorrows away and not look at their life. And so they surround themselves with people who have no depth of soul and also are just trying to not look at their own lives. And so when you got a whole group of people like that, there's a lot of destruction and chaos that can happen in that kind of a situation. Same thing can be said for any drug, anything. They can be used and abused. If you're not using them in a proper way, then you're abusing them. They say like the soldiers back in the war, right? They gave them cocaine for the pain to keep them to get going and do all the things that they needed to do. And the soldiers who came home who had loving families got off those drugs, no problem. And the ones who didn't. So anytime that we are harming ourselves is because of a lack of love, 100,000,000% of the time. So if you're, drinking and you've got a lack of love within you, it's going to exacerbate that. Whereas if you used it in a, loving way, in a spiritual connection type way, it would have a completely different result. and it wouldn't end up draining and depleting you like it does when you use it to just go out and party, right? Like I see psilocybin as some very beautiful, wonderful medicine that can be used here on this earth to help enlighten people to a way, right? To help them to open their minds, to think a different way, in the most beneficial way. But some people use that as a party drug, and they go out and they're at a party, and then you are not getting the benefits from it. It is all your intention. You can use and abuse things that are good for you. Like, I like eating watermelon, but if I was to eat 17 watermelons a day, it wouldn't be good for me anymore, would it? No. Anything can be used and abused in the wrong way, and it's all the intention behind it. It's all the thought. So, as I mentioned at the start, if it's got no depth, if it's got no soul, I don't want it in my life, because I look at how much energy I got. I've only got this much, same as you every morning when you wake up. And what do I want to spend it on? Things that are surface level, that are meaningless. I could never, ever in a billion years ever go back to those days when I wasn't thoughtful about my life. I couldn't. I wouldn't want to. I would never do that. But some people are still sleeping, and we have to give those people grace, because they haven't got the suffering yet. They haven't had something that has pushed them so horribly hard that they had to heal from it, because, hey, I want this thing, so I know I need to heal from this. I want to be happy, so I know I need to heal from this. Some people will get stuck in blame and victim mode for such a long time that they don't know that there's a different way. They don't know that they're fully responsible and that they can change, clear, cleanse, heal their consciousness. Just imagine you've gone through the most horrible thing you've ever gone through in your life. You live to tell the tale, and then you can help people with it afterwards. But you can only help people if you don't become a victim, and you don't, blame everybody else. If you take responsibility for the healing that needs to come from it, then you can change your life. You change your mind, you change your life. When I'm working with people, that's all we're doing, is we're changing your mind. We're having you see things in a different perspective. What did you gain from that? What did you learn? Well, now you know what you don't want, don't you? From that experience, you know exactly what you don't want. So you're either going to learn from it and you're going to do something different next time, or you're going to do the same thing again and you're going to be stuck in the exact same place again. And then you're going to do it again and again, and things repeat. These patterns repeat until we heal them. So the first step is recognizing the pattern that needs to be healed. I did this and now I feel this way. I guess this is what needs to be healed. And then doing it, doing the work. And is it easy? No. I know back in the day, from childhood, was very closed off. Very, not closed off, but very harsh, I would say. Somebody doesn't like me, or I know that they don't. Okay, well, now I'm going to give them a reason to. I was just harsh, but the best friend you could ever hope for. I was loyal, I was kind, I was all the good and wonderful things, as long as you didn't oppose me. And I look at that now, and I was not a sweet, caring, warm type person back in the day. I was just very kind, I was nice, but I may have come across that I was that way, but I couldn't feel it. Couldn't feel that, the actual feeling of that warmth, love. I couldn't. I'm sure this has to do with my father. Or maybe karma from another life. That's extremely possible. That's probably what it was. Anyway, so once I healed this, in order to heal it, I had to feel things, and I had to look at things that I only subconsciously knew, intuitively knew. And through my hypnosis work, I regressed myself back over and over and over and over and over and over, and dealt with these things that had happened in the past, these traumatic events. And as I dealt with them, as I healed them, it then opened me up to feel emotions that I had never felt before, which was extremely difficult to handle. When I had never actually truly allowed myself to feel real grief or pain or any of those things, it was pretty awful. But on the opposite spectrum of it, I then was now able to feel love unlike I had ever been able to feel it before. And so I remember at one point, because I was working with a friend doing this, and she would do sessions for me, and I just remember thinking, like, I regret it. I regret ever even starting to heal this, because you get the pain along with the good. And she was like, I know, but then the good is real good, and it's true. It's true, it's worth it. But you do have to feel the crap at some point, and it can be hard and it can hurt, but you can work your way through it. And then once you've gone through it, you'll be so glad that you did, because you've then healed these parts within you. They're not damaged anymore, because the only reason that they're operating out of coldness is because there's fear that is there. Fear, I'm going to get hurt, so I'm just going to protect myself before I ever even get close to getting hurt. And through doing this, you are, you're limiting the potential of what you could be experiencing living while you're here on life. Somebody said this, maybe it was David Goggins, I don't know, but he said, what a shame it is to go your whole life and to not know, basically how miraculous your body is. If you weren't in shape, if you couldn't do the things you wanted to do, what a shame that is. Like, it's seriously, it is ruining a part of your life that you could be enjoying if you don't take care of your body. This is the same for any area of your life. If you neglect the spiritual side of you, that spiritual nature that is just innate within you, if you neglect it, it is like neglecting your body. It will cause you damage, all kinds of damage. But people who don't take care of their body, they don't even understand just how much damage they are actually doing to themselves if they haven't ever experienced what it's like to have a healthy body. Because it affects you in every single area. And, having depth, that's something that it's the most important thing. Then we're not looking at surface level things either. So if somebody comes up to you and they're like, this dickhead did this to me and blah, blah, blah. Well, when you're awake and aware, you're intuitively listening to that and you're thinking, that person must be suffering in some way. And you make excuses for this person, but you're not doing it to negate the other person's feelings. You're doing it because you're coming out of a place of love and you're seeing them through different eyes, and making excuses for other people is exactly what you would want them to do for you. If you came across a certain way and you were just maybe having a bad day, or you didn't mean it or whatever, you want 15 people to sit there and think a certain way about you now because of your one bad day? Or do you want someone to say, hey, you know what, I know this person, maybe they were just having an off day and you guys need to shut up? And how would that change things? So, like I said, if it ain't got no soul, I don't want it. Which leads me to the topic for tomorrow, which is about sex. And it is about those that are born of the Spirit are spirit, and those that are born of earthly lusts do not have that spirit. That's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Anyways, I love you all, and I hope you have the most wonderful day today. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow. See you then.